Okay, so the first thing you need to do is write your name on the back of your paper and your code. Flip it over. You need a placemat and an apron, and you need one color of paint and a very large brush. You're going to paint your whole paper one color. When you paint, I ask that you treat your brush nicely. Always start on one end, drag it to the other end. If you're left-handed, start on this end, drag it to the other end. You never want to push or scooch. Pulls the hair, bad hair days. Okay? So you're just going to dip it in your paint and drag. Now if that happens, that means you don't have enough paint on your brush, so just get more. Make sure you hit all your edges. That's what your placemat is there for. And I like to smooth my paint as I work. So you can see up here the globs. You don't want globs, you want it to be smooth. So I just keep going back. Now, see how I'm coming backwards? See how I flip my paintbrush and I move it backwards? That's how you keep a good hair day brush. So if you need to come back, flip, move back, flip, flip. That way you're never pushing its hair. Okay, once you've painted your whole piece, it still has to be wet for this to work. You're going to use a paint scraping tool, and they come in a variety of shapes, and you want to scrape the paint across your paper. Now you can scrape it just going straight. You can scrape it on a curve. The thing that you should know is you do have to press down a little bit in order for the paint to be scraped. So you can't just go like this and think something's going to happen. You kind of have to use a little bit of pressure on your arm and press. And you can change it up like I'm doing, or you can do the whole thing one way. So this one I'm going to try and do a little wavy. Now up here my paint dried a little bit already, so that's why it's not appearing that well, but that's okay. What we're doing is we're trying to give this paper a little more interesting of a texture to look at, so it's not just plain old paint. Okay? Your paint scraping tool will have paint that has scraped off onto it, so you are going to have to bring this back to the sink and rinse off that paint. Make it nice and clean for the next person who's going to use it. So here's your big large paper. You need to write your name on the back and your code. Flip it over, and we are going to use watercolor paints to paint this entire paper. It's going to take a little while because the paper is so big. So watercolor, you need water, you need a paintbrush, and you need your paints, and they come in a tray. When we use watercolor paints, I ask that you really rinse your brush in between colors because you don't want to get any color mixed in with another color because then that color can get ruined. Okay, so you have to really, really take the time. Rinse, 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 rinse. Dab it, then pick a new color. So you want to pick either all warm colors, so warm colors would be red, orange, yellow, or all cool colors. Those would be colors that make you feel cold, so like violets and blues and greens. I'm going to pick warm, colors that make me feel warm. And I'm going to start with yellow first because yellow is my lightest. So I got my paintbrush wet, now I'm putting it in the yellow, and I'm going to just make some yellow marks all around my paper. Now that I have the yellow, I'm going to rinse, and I'm working very fast, but I'm going to rinse really well. Now I'm going to move to some orange. I'm just going to do the same thing. So what you want to do before this all dries on you, you want to get a dry paper towel And you want to kind of crumple it a little bit, and you want to dab some of this paint off. And what it does is going to leave these interesting marks onto the paint itself. But it can only work when your paint is wet. So you might have to stop in the middle, do a little dabbing, and then keep going. If the paint's dry, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so I'm done with that orange. I'm going to rinse, 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 rinse. Now I'm going to go to a red orange, so that's a little darker of an orange. There's more red inside of that color. Same thing. And while it's nice and wet, dab, dab, dab. And you will immediately start to see the marks that it's creating. Make sure you get all the way to your edges. Okay, so you're going to have 3 pieces of painted paper once everything is all dry. You're going to have your watercolor that we dab with the paper towels. You're going to have your paper that we marbled in the food coloring. And then you're going to have the paint with the scraped technique. What you want to do is you want to take this paper, the one that you scraped your designs onto, flip it over, take your marbled paper, and this is going to be your guide, and I'm going to line it up on the corner, and I'm going to trace it. And that way we're making the same size paper here. We're going to use the rest of this for another part of the project. So what you want to do is go ahead, cut this out. And you can set this to the side with your watercolor paper. We're going to use these 2 right now. What we're going to do is we're going to make a weaving. So we've done this before, so we have to create the loom. That is what we weave onto. And you can decide, do you want this to be your loom or do you want this to be your loom? Either one is fine. I'm going to make this one my loom. Actually, you know, I'm going to work on this side instead, the white side. We used a ruler and a pencil. And I made a line here at the top, and I'm going to make lines that come straight down. And when we did our weavings before, we kind of played with curvy lines. If you want to do that, you can. I'm going to keep mine simple, and then we cut until you hit that line. You don't want to cut all the way. Please make sure you do this. And then we open it up, and here is our loom that we can weave through. So these would be our warp strings, and then we have to create our weft. So this we have to cut up into strips, and I'm going to cut them up this way because I'm going to weave them that way. So I'm using my ruler again to help me here. And I'm just going to make straight lines. You should probably not make these super skinny. That's going to just be harder on you. And you want to cut these out. Okay, so now I'm ready to weave. So you want to think over, under, over, under, over, under, your basic tabby weave. That's all we're going to do. I go over the first one, over it, go under the second one, over the third, under the fourth, over the fifth, under the sixth. And remember, you want to scooch it up, scooch it up. Now this time I have to do opposite. So I go under first, then over, under, over, under, and I end over, and I scooch up. And if it's going to help you to glue now, go ahead and put little dots of glue. Otherwise, just wait till the end and do it all at once. You want this neat as can be. Okay, so I'm done weaving. Now, when I was weaving the bottom here, you could see this popped out. So I have to go back. I have to make sure I catch that. If it doesn't look right, then it's probably not right. And I got to tuck that back under. And now, if you haven't done so already, you can glue all your warp down, or your weft, sorry, down. Weft is the one that goes across. And remember, you got to do this on the back too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my watercolor paper back in front of me. And you want to glue your weaving to the watercolor paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little space underneath my weaving and then a lot of space above my weaving. Because what this is going to turn into, it's going to turn into a house. So I'm going to take my purple paper here and I am going to make a triangle top for the house. And if you want to do this before you glue on your weaving, that might be a good idea, just so you know what it might look like. So you might want to lay it on top a little bit or just set it right up there like this. You want to think of that roof to be roughly the same size as your weaving. You don't want a nice big old weaving and then a tiny roof. So put glue all over the back. Same thing, make sure it's flat. So now what you can do is you can use, you're going to have a lot of this paper left over that you can use. I have a little bit of my marbled paper that I can use. I'm going to use this. I'm going to create a chimney. So I'm simply just going to cut a little rectangle out. And while this is still a little wet, I'm just going to tuck it behind there like that. And then you can use scrap paper, any kind of scrap paper. You can even, if you're working next to somebody who's really willing maybe to share, you guys can use each other's painted paper, because I still have a lot here. I could definitely share with somebody, and that way you can pull in more colors into yours, so you're not using the same color just over and over again. That's an option, or you can go through just my regular construction paper scraps, and your goal is you want to create a beautiful house. So right now it's a house, we can tell that, but we need details now. So we need a door, we need some windows, we need bushes and trees, if you want to do a fence, all these things you want to think about. A neighborhood house serving our community, giving people places to live. So I'm going to work on mine and then I will show you it when I'm all done. Okay, so now that you have your house glued on your paper, you want to decide what you are going to want to put around your house and on your house. You kind of have to make those decisions, at least some of them, before you start going, because you're going to have to layer. So for instance, I know I'm going to want a fence on either side of my house, but I also want bushes in the front. So that means I'm going to have to do my fence first. That way the bushes look like they're in front of the fence. If I did the bushes first, then I'd have to figure out a way to tuck the fence behind the bushes. Okay, so you have to think about that kind of stuff. If you're going to do a tree or anything in the background, you would probably have to do the tree first, then a fence, then a bush, so it all kind of makes sense as to what is in the background and what is in front. Okay, so I'm going to get started here, and I'm literally just going through scrap paper, finding colors I need, and going with the flow. And if you feel you need to draw on this paper beforehand to get your shapes correct, I would probably do that with a pencil. Otherwise, you can just start cutting. Okay, so now that I have glued everything down that I think I want, I'm going to add the details. I'm using Sharpie. I am not using a pencil first, I'm just going for it. If you feel you need to use a pencil first, please do that. Because you can't erase Sharpie, but you can erase the pencil. So right now I'm adding the details and the textures on the shutters and the windows. You probably would want to add like a doorknob for your door. You can add details around your windows. It's a time for you to think about maybe what you have at your own house and add that in. Okay, so here is my house. My building that serves a function to the community. I added detail with construction paper crayons on my trees, my window boxes. I used Sharpie for brick for my chimney, and I am all finished. Please think about using your best effort, add in beautiful details when you do this work.